Welcome to this question and answer session with Bruce Thornton, independent consultant and trainer. Bruce developed the risk model several years ago with David Paul of Gwynedd Council. Bruce has introduced the risk model to authorities across Wales and England over the last 10 years. In this conversation, we focus on the link between case law, those factors relating to the parent, and the change that needs to be realised. Bruce, how do I work out what needs to change?
When we think about child protection, it's this idea about change that determines whether our practice is effective or not. Change is about that shift from care not being good enough through intervention to care that's good enough. So change at the heart of what makes child protection effective or not. However, working out what to focus on is a challenge. The reality is that in many situations there will be lots of areas where change is needed. The key to effective child protection is working out what exactly to focus on. We've said many times you can't focus on 20 things to change and really make progress. Focus and keep it to the most important areas. There is a piece of case law that helps us with this. Sir James Mumby, when he was president of the Family Court Division, made observations about a particular case. It helps us understand the threshold of significant harm and how evidence should be presented to court. He reminded local authorities that they needed to present their evidence and conclusions in a specific way. For example, if a child was suffering emotional harm or a certain type of harm, if the local authority were arguing that this was a consequence of some parental behaviour, then they needed to explain how one was causing the other. It was not enough for you on one hand to list the child's symptoms and on the other all the failings of the parent. If the local authority was making causal linkages, the connection between these two things needed to be made. It seems all too easy to assess parental deficiencies on one hand and assess the child's unmet needs on the other. However, if there are causal links being suggested, this needs to be made clear. What I mean is, if you are saying a child is suffering significant harm because of something about the parent, you need to explain why you argue one leads to the other. This also serves the interest of justice, of course, as it allows parents to defend their positions and the courts to scrutinise the arguments. In Risk 2 and the Significant Harm Checklist, we explore the significance of harm. Significance is about the meaning, inference or attribution that links the harm caused with its cause. When practitioners write their statements of the reason for their decision about significant harm, we ask them to clarify these linkages. This should demonstrate the connection that Sir James Mumby was referring to. In effective child protection, we focus on change, the 1, 2, or 3 areas of change linked to significant harm. These will almost universally be areas related to that connection. This is what you should focus on. Don't get distracted. Logically, if a child suffers emotional harm through witnessing domestic violence, that is, one of the parents behaved aggressively towards the other, resorts to physical violence, and the child reports feeling scared, then this will be a focus area of change. The change may be written as mum and dad need to ensure that they are managing their behaviour and making sure that the children do not see or hear heated arguments or physical violence, as this has left the children feeling scared in the past. So, Sir James Mumby presented the need for connections. I think the risk model makes the connection while clarifying significance. Then, effective child protection has the focus on change, which connects concerns with intervention. So, 2 really important things child protection is about. Significant harm. The changes identified should be directly linked to significant harm. Don't get distracted. Ensure you make the connections between harm and alleged causal factors. It is in this connection that we identify what needs to change.
So are you saying that the focus on change is that connection required by Sir James Mumby?
Yes, that's how I understand what he was saying. I think effective child protection provides plenty of approaches to ensure the practitioner identifies these connections. I mean, the connection between the harm to a child and what practitioners believe is causing that harm. Not always, but often, the presenting issue causing harm to the child is the behaviour of a parent. Effective child protection, more than anything, is trying to focus on the change in that area, and the measure part of the model goes beyond just focusing on change. It breaks that change down into smaller steps. When you're breaking things down like this into steps, you are scrutinising what you're doing all the time and checking, asking yourself, am I on the right track? If you identify these steps working with parents, they are more likely to understand the changes needed and to engage with them. And if we ensure, as we gather our evidence, asking yourself always, what is the day-to-day life of the child? I think we're well placed to be on the right track at least.
Thanks, Bruce.